everyone, it's Bonnie here. Welcome to Brush and Splash Studio. In this video, I am sharing with you some fall themed prints that I've been working on the last few weeks. So I'm using my 8x10 gel plate and also my 5x7. I hope this video inspires you in some way to bring out your gel plates if you haven't used them in a while and just have fun and create. For my first print, I am trying to create a sunset or sunrise, and I am using cadmium orange hue and primary yellow to create a gradient of sorts. Okay, so the background didn't take long at all to dry, so there we go. I'm just going to set that aside for now, and I'm going to work on the second part of the print. So I have a bird stencil here, and I'm applying Folk Arts multi-surface satin pure black paint. What I'm doing here is I'm just applying one coat first, letting that dry completely, and then going in with a second coat. Okay, so here I am using two gel plates now. The smaller gel plate I'm using as a stamp pad, and I'm applying some acrylic paint directly to the smaller gel plate, taking a faux leaf and just pressing it down by using my hands with a piece of wax paper over top and applying it onto my working plate. So I'm just using these faux leaves as stamps. Okay, and I'm using a few different colors here. The first color that I used was red oxide, then I'm using yellow oxide. You'll see a brown shade that's burnt umber, and then I'm using hooker's green as well. Okay, so once everything has dried on the plate, I'm going to be using my matte medium to pick up all the layers using the original background that I worked on at the beginning of the video. And whenever I use a matte medium on my gel plate to pick up my layers, I like to let the matte medium sit for at least 10 minutes to dry. I find that the matte medium, no matter what brand I use, does take a little bit longer to dry than acrylic paint. And since I've been letting my layers dry completely on my gel plate before I attempt to lift up either the gel plate from the paper or vice versa, I haven't really had many issues lately with my paper sticking to the plate in any way. So let your layers dry completely and you should avoid that type of problem. For my second print, I'm going to be using an image transfer technique. So if you'd like to see how I go about using my inkjet printer to create my image transfers, I will link the video where I show you step by step on how I go about doing that down below in the description box. So I'm starting off by creating a background for my image transfer, and I'm using a light shade of cream that I created using Naples yellow and titanium white. So this picture I found on UnSplash.com, and it's by the photographer Mark Timberlake, and it's free to use under the UnSplash license. So here I'm just pressing down the image onto the plate, and I'm just making sure that all areas are pressed down, and I'm using a spray bottle filled with water to completely soak the back of the image. I'll let this sit for a little while, 20 minutes or so. And now you're going to be left with your plate filled with water. And so the hard part is letting this dry. You don't want to go over the ink with your paper towel or cloth, whatever you use, to dry it, because you will pick up the ink. So you have to just go around, if you want, jiggle the plate a little bit so that some of the extra water falls to your working surface. But basically you want to let it dry on its own. And here I am applying some matte medium again, placing down my background, and there we go. So for my next print, I am going to be using some faux flowers on my gel plate. And the best faux flowers that I like to use that give me the most natural impression on the plate are faux sunflowers and faux daisies. So really anything that has a nice textured center will look the most realistic on the gel plate. So because the weather is pretty dry, it's not as humid anymore like it was in the summer, my plate is drying really fast lately. So I just added some slow drying medium along with my acrylic paint, so I have time to press down my flowers. And here I'm just using a recycled straw to add some circles to my plate. Forgot to mention the brown shade that I was using, and that would be Burnt Umber by Pebeo Studio Acrylics. Okay, so I let that dry completely before I moved on to this step here, where I'm using some makeup applicators that I buy just to use with my pastels and my paints. And I'm applying Green Earth by the same brand and to the centers of the flowers, and then I'm going to let this dry completely, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. Okay, so to pick up the print, I am using Liquitex Basics Naples Yellow Hue and Yellow Oxide. All right, I just wanted to blend two different yellow shades together. And then I'm just using regular copy paper and letting this dry thoroughly for a little while, and you will see the results in just a moment. And I think I've shown this little trick before in the past, but I use a plastic palette knife to sort of break the edge, okay, because sometimes it does stick. And there we go. There is my print. That was a lot of fun to create. Okay, so I switched my plate to my 5x7 size, and I'm going to be using metallic paint and black paper this time. Okay, so for my next print, I'm going to be using a stencil that I have here. I'm not sure where I bought this one from. I think it came in a set, but it fits perfectly on my 5x7 plate. So that's why I prefer sometimes just to use my 5x7 plate, because a lot of my stencils fit the smaller plate. And to apply the paint to my stencil or to my plate through the stencil, I'm using makeup sponges. Sponges I feel work the best when you're trying to apply paint to your gel plate, because you run the risk of paint seeping underneath your stencil if you use your brayer. So I let the paint dry completely before I used matte medium to pull the print. But what happened was I used a little bit too much of the matte medium. Sometimes it's difficult to gauge how much you need. So less is best. Just remember that when it comes to the gel plate most times. So yeah, I applied too much, and what happened was the paper ended up buckling, and so you'll see a line in the middle of my print. Okay, for my final print, I'm going to be using a crow mask that I made and cut out using my cutting machine. I have a few different sizes that I'm trying to figure out which one I should use on my 5x7 gel plate. Now, I would make a video showing you how I go about, making my masks and stencils, but my cutting machine is really old now. I bought it back in 2015, so I doubt anyone has the same model that I have. So if I ever have to update my machine and purchase a newer model, I will definitely make a video showing you how I go about making masks and stencils. To pick up my mask, I'm going to be using a similar background to the one I made earlier. I made a few different floral backgrounds so I could use them in collage. So I let this dry for a bit, and I'm just flipping over my gel plate, using my plastic spatula again to break the seal. And you will see that there is still some background showing, and I'm just going to cut that using some scissors. So that's going to be the end of my video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will hopefully see you on my next one. Bye everyone, happy creating.